Welcome, Ames Chamber of Commerce members. This is Drew Camp, Vice President with the Ames Chamber of Commerce, here to do another interview with our state legislators. We're happy to welcome today Representative Dave Dio, who represents Nevada and some parts of eastern and northern and southern Story County. Representative, thanks for being with us today.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
And then as we look at another important issue that we touched on a little bit earlier, transportation and just infrastructure in general, but also within that broadband connectivity and expansion, can you talk a little bit about what hopefully we can see this legislative session on some of those issues?
Yeah, some of the things, in transportation, I think we've done some good things in the past several years. I was a supporter of the gas tax increase, which I think has done more to help improve our transportation infrastructure here in the state. That's one of the things we've done that's really has had that big benefit. Counties, my counties and my areas are building more bridges because of it. They're replacing some of these old bridges. Iowa gets a bad rap because they count all the bridges in Iowa, and we have an awful lot of bridges here that have fewer than 50 cars a day going across them, but those get counted just the same as a bridge that's on an interstate, with 10,000 cars a day. And so it gives us the black eye of supposedly having a lot of poor bridges. But we're working on that. Another thing we did that maybe not too many people have heard about is we passed a bill that actually allowed the state to do a swap where let's say a county is building a bridge and they want to replace that bridge. Before they were getting some federal dollars and some state dollars, and they had to count both, and whenever they took some federal dollars to put up towards that bridge project, they had to do all of the federal rules, which require an awful lot more rules on the contractors, and it makes the projects much more expensive. And we allow the counties now and the cities to be able to do a swap where if they're doing a project that's like, it was already a federal road project anyways, they can put all the federal money towards that, and then basically allocate the state dollars to the local bridge, and then save potentially, maybe 20-25% on the cost of that bridge. Plus the fact that now local contractors might be qualified to do a large culvert or a small bridge or something like that. So that's been a big benefit to local, particularly counties. It's been a really good deal for them.
Yeah, and I know that just from working with the counties and the cities, that was a nice, that was an asset to them to be able to get that bill passed. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of keeping it in the positive trajectory of, like how we can positively impact the state. As you look at the opportunities that there are for the state of Iowa within your district and just the state as a whole. Here with Representative Beth Wessel-Krischel, who largely represents the southern part of Ames in her district. What do you think that the legislature needs to do to ensure transportation infrastructure and broadband access and connectivity are adequately being addressed?
And another good question. Mm-hmm. We have taken some measures, particularly in broadband. I know there's $1.3 million in grants available for broadband. There's also a 10-year property tax exemption since 2015 for broadband expansion and infrastructure. So I think we have some programs out there, and I don't have information about whether those are being used or where the problems are. So I think that would be good information. Of course, a few years ago, we did increase the fuel tax for our transportation infrastructure. I've understood from many people that that's not adequate. It is hard to make that argument this soon after making the increase just a few years ago.
Yeah, especially with just doing it so soon, and then also with election year too.
Well,
Senate President Pro Tem, Senator Jerry Bain. Senator, thanks for being with us here today.
It's my pleasure, Drew. I look forward to coming and talking to you.
When you look at what does the legislature need to do, also transportation is obviously a really big thing. We've seen some improvements in the last 5 years with the increase to the gas tax and the increased revenue coming from that. But what does the legislature need to do to ensure transportation infrastructure, but also broadband access and connectivity and just infrastructure in general are addressed?
Transportation is all being worked through the DOT. They're trying to work out ways to get more efficient traffic across the state. But as far as broadband, I think that's also a big key. If we're going to allow development in the rural areas, we got to see what we can do to influence as much investment in there as we can. If you were a business, you wouldn't invest in the country because there's not enough people there for a payback. So we know there has to be some, and between federal and state, I hope we can get enough broadband out there to keep the rural areas competitive.
We now welcome Senator Annette Sweeney, who represents Northern Story County, Eastern Story County, and all the way over towards Waterloo, Cedar Falls, and Dyke, New Hartford. Senator, thanks for joining us here today.
Oh, you bet. This is always a fun time to get to be able to visit and also to hear input from other individuals about what we've got going on.
What does the legislature need to do, and we referenced this earlier, to ensure transportation, water, wastewater, and other infrastructure, as well as broadband access and connectivity, are something that are available to all people throughout the state of Iowa?
That question is a very complex question.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot in there.
Yeah, there is. And I'll go back to USDA again. There are a lot of programs with the wastewater systems. I had a very smart person tell me, nobody's going to move to a town if they can't take a shower and have the water go away.
And the rains are so exponentially high.
Yes, exactly. And so I think one of the main things I would like to see is our small towns address the wastewater systems. There are a lot of them that have been in place for 100 years. And so I do look at that as people wanting to come in to live in a town. Broadband. Oh my goodness, we have been working on that. Well, I've been in and out of the legislature for about 12 years now, and every year we've talked about it. Our Iowa telecoms are doing a fabulous job. We have over 160 across the state of Iowa. And I just heard up today that a number of satellites were put out by a particular company to try to get, in the areas where you can't even get the fiber, whether they can bounce off a satellite. So things are happening so fast right now with the broadband, finally, for people to be able to get, because I have an individual of mine that started a particular business. He was 100 feet too far to get fiber. And they wouldn't even consider, even if they would pay for the fiber, they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it. And so I'm hoping that the satellites will work. And I talked to a couple individuals last year about this. So this is fun. It's finally evolving. So I'm looking forward to that.
And that's another piece you mentioned, Empower Rural Iowa. That was a piece specifically funded for broadband extension and expansion. That was something specifically funded with that. And I know that's another recommendation. They have to continue that as well.
Yes, they do. And then also I go back to USDA. Our state has gotten a number of funds to help out with broadband.
And that was one of those too. They came out, unfortunately, it was right before the government shutdown, so it got clouded a little bit. But it was the grants, the loan grant combos, and the loans that are really up to $100 million, I believe, in total for the country that they have for those. And that's very impactful.
Yes, and Iowa got a large sum of that. Iowa's always been really good about being on top of those programs, and we have a great staff down in Des Moines with that.
Yeah, and that's something, like I said, it gets back to leveraging those different pots of money too.
Yes, exactly.
Very grateful today to be with Representative Ross Wilburn. He represents part of North Ames in the seat previously held by Representative Heddens, now Supervisor Heddens. Representative Wilburn, thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you, and thanks to the viewers out there. It's great to be here.
And what does the legislature need to do, one of the topics we discussed a little bit earlier that we said we'd come back to ensure that transportation infrastructure and broadband access, connectivity, and innovation really are adequately being addressed?
Well, in December 2018, the governor announced $1.3 million in grants would be available for broadband, and in 2015, the legislature created a 10-year property tax exemption for broadband infrastructure in targeted service areas, which if it's a targeted service area, if it is the lower bandwidth, the lower download and upload rates, and I don't know that Ames would qualify for that, but I remember being at the library in Nevada, and there was a broadband issue there one night when several of us were trying to watch some of the debates that were going on. But those are the types of investments that we need to take a look at. And I'll go back to my earlier statement about I understand everyone has concern about tax and how much you're taxed relative to the national averages, both corporate and personal, which are slightly below what they are. But it's what are we getting that return on investment? What type of services do we want to see? What type of support we want to see, and what's the appropriate amount of revenue and tax rate to get to that point? So rather than just focusing on high, low, no, or you got to take a look at that return on investments, because and then how we as a community will embrace those. I mean, downtown, the Ames City Council could say zero commercial property tax in the downtown area, right? And if people aren't shopping in the downtown area and supporting that local business, then how much headway did we make? It's just something to think about. Yeah.
Especially as you look at those different pots and different taxing jurisdictions, so to speak. It's local option sales tax, property tax, and those things.
Yeah, but the critical piece is return on investment, and it's important to look all the way around about that.
And one of the big things too, you talked a little bit about the broadband piece. It's important to know too with what the state did. That can be leveraged in USDA if you qualify for the USDA rural requirements. There's a lot of really good loan grants and grants that you can also get that they've made available for connectivity and broadband. So those are really important things to remember too, is just how can you leverage the whole package to really get the most impact. Thank you, Ames Chamber of Commerce members, for watching. Please do come back and listen to the next audio interviews with our next few questions for our state legislators next week.